Ruth Chepngetich set a remarkable new women's world record in the Chicago Marathon 2024, and she did it by doing the same thing we all do to run faster. My name is Jae Gruenke. I'm the founder of The Balanced Runner, and I've been helping runners and triathletes from beginner to Olympian improve their form and performance since 2003. And today I'd like to show you what was already great about Chepng'etich's form and was a huge asset for her in setting this new record, and then also make a comparison between this race, how she ran in London in 2024, and how she ran in Chicago last year to see the differences in form that made her so much faster. All right, here's Chepng'etich at mile 22. You can see her coming into view. Start getting an impression, and in a moment, when we have her more directly from the side, we'll pause and look at a couple things. Okay, so there's her foot strike, and from there, if we go frame by frame, you'll see that her head keeps getting lower in the air, closer to her foot. So this is her loading phase, and as we continue, we'll reach the point when her head is at its lowest, which I think is right here. We'll go one more frame to be sure. Yeah, about that. So this is mid-stance. This is where you've stopped landing. You haven't started taking off again. And we can see in this position that her trunk is tilted forward. So we can call that a forward lean, or more accurately, forward trunk inclination. And that puts her head in front of her pelvis and also in front of her foot. And at the same time, we can see that if we dropped a line straight down from her right hip joint, the right side of her pelvis, to her ankle, they would be directly vertically aligned. So that means that although her trunk is tilted forward, her pelvis is not behind her foot as if she were sitting in a chair. So these are the two characteristics of a good lean, a good forward trunk inclination. And we look at this here first because as she continues on to take off into the air, into flight, her upper body turns, and it can get a little more confusing as to whether her trunk is tilted forward or not, looking from the side. So you can see that it is, though, because her head is still in front of her pelvis. If she were on the other leg, her right shoulder would be back and she would look more upright, except that her head would still be forward. We can, however, see, if we go ahead to the next stance phase, here she comes, right about there. You can see that there's a muscle standing out from behind her right ear to the base of her throat. That's called the sternocleidomastoid, and it pulls the head forward, and it's standing out because it's very active right now, pulling her head forward. And this is a sign, and you're going to see that even stand out more sharply as she takes off into the air, that she's having to pull her head forward to keep it moving with the rest of her body, which means that actually she could probably use slightly more forward tilt of her trunk for her speed and her stride length at the moment. But it's not a big discrepancy. There's another sign that this is true, and I'll go ahead and let this play again, and you'll see that she nods slightly. As she goes up into the air, her chin comes down a little bit. So that nodding action is another sign that her head is a little farther back than would be ideal, so that the forward and upward push from her foot is causing her to nod instead of simply pushing her head forward. Her head's a little bit behind that vector. So now let's pop back and take a look at her arms. You can see that her hands are very close to her heart, actually. Her knuckles practically grazing her shirt. And as she comes into side view again, we'll let this run a little farther and then go frame by frame. As her foot comes to the ground, you can see it's directly below her left hand, so her right foot, left hand. And we're not quite a perfect side view, so we'll see this on the other side, more directly from the side, and there we go. The foot vertically aligned with the hand. And now you may have noticed her right hand was actually somewhat out in front of her chest. There we go. So, and that is a right-left asymmetry that she has. It's very, very common. Very common for people to put their right hand out a little farther from their body to compensate for it. It has to do with the right side of the body being a little shorter, and so the upper body can't usually turn as easily left as it does right. And so the hand swings out in front to make up for that. But the other thing is that nice forward trunk inclination, that lean that we saw, that because the hand and the foot will always be vertically aligned at foot strike, if the hand is way out in front, the trunk will be more upright. So when you bring your hands closer to your chest comes closer to your hands. And you get that nice lean as opposed to popping upright, which would then make your head nod more. You're not pushing your whole body forward as effectively. We can go ahead a little farther right at that moment if you don't have a good forward lean. And now popping back again just to look at one more aspect of the foot strike here that we can see from the side. So having seen that hand-foot alignment, you can also see the foot-knee alignment. So if we go slowly forward here, you can see her her lower leg is basically vertical here. As we see some compression of the shoe, we know that she's really landed and that her nervous system can feel that she's landed. There's a little bit of compression of the shoe that needs to happen before your nervous system even registers the contact with the ground. And here again, same thing. So, and it's a pretty flat foot strike, really. We don't exactly know where the foot is in the shoe. But that's another benefit of this forward trunk inclination that she has, is it produces that very nice foot strike. And now let's carry on and take a look at the factor that is producing all of this movement, basically, which you can see from the back. You can see, we've already talked about the upper body rotation. So you can see that she's just taken off of her right foot, the right side of her pelvis is turned back a little bit. We'll go into the details on this in just a moment, and her left shoulder. And so as she continues on, you'll see that opposite diagonal relationship here. The left side of the pelvis is coming backwards, or rather the right side is going forwards faster. So it's in front, and the right shoulder is turning back. And so it's not just the upper body turning, though that's critical. It's also the pelvis turning. And again, now as we go forward, you can look at her right buttock and you can see that it actually stays farther behind in space than her right. And so there's this beautiful moment. It's really my favorite action in all of running, is this moment when the pelvis is turning towards the stance foot. So in this case, the left side of the pelvis is going back, the right side is going forward. And then just as the runner approaches toe off, the pelvis direction reverses, and there's this strong push forward of the hip on that side. It happened there, and you'll be able to see it even better on the right side here. So the hip is going back, 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 forward. And it's a very powerful movement, especially on her. There, and there, and there. You think of it as the leg being powerful, but it's actually the turning of the pelvis and the force that creates. All right, so now let's take a look at the broadcast footage so we can see Chepng'etich's form from the front and see how her feet are working. I think this is a really, and her legs, a really significant asset for her, and the relationship to her head and how the core action plays into that. So here you see her fading in and out of view behind her pacers, and see that her feet are falling in line with her hip joint. So she's not running as if she were on a tightrope with one foot directly in front of the other, but each foot is pretty much directly below its hip joint. And now let's watch a little bit in slow motion. As soon as she appears from behind the pasters, you'll see that her head is actually moving side to side, so that when she is about to land on her left foot, the head comes into alignment with her left foot. And then when she's about to land on her right foot, her head is in alignment with her right foot. So this side-to-side movement of the head, just as the feet land under the hands when you're looking from the side, when you're looking from the front, the feet really need to land under the head, or at the very least, the knees need to come under the head to support the head. And so if the head is not moving side to side, then the feet land one in front of another, like on a tightrope, or there's huge overpronation and the knees swivel inwards in order to support the head. And so this counter rotation of upper body and lower body is actually a spiraling action that moves the weight side to side, the head side to side, so that the feet can be on either side and not come to the middle. And this allows her to really come off her big toes and get a long stride and really use her joints the way they're supposed to work. So it is good for both efficiency of movement and for power. And we definitely know that she must have had both for this enormous record that she just set. So now coming into motion again, you can see even as she deals with the trying to get some water, because we're seeing a little from the side, you can see more movement of her torso. Sometimes low quality video is better than higher quality video because you can't get lost in too much detail. So if you feel like you're not sure if you're doing the core action or you're not seeing the benefits that Chepng'etich has from having a really great core action, we do teach that. We have an online course, and the description is the link is in the description below. So check that out. We'd love to help you get better at it. Now let's compare Chepng'etich's last two marathons with this one. So all the way on the right is her 2024 world record run in Chicago. The middle one is London of 2024, so that was in April of 2024. And the one on the left is Chicago 2023, from a different location on the course. So we've got the videos queued up so that all three videos, the foot will hit the ground at the same time, and let's take a look at what happens. So that was 4 footsteps. We're about to have the 5th occur. And take a look at the back leg. So the video on the right in Chicago 2024, Chepng'etich has a higher cadence because she is now at a later point in her gait cycle after 4 steps. So play it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go one more footstep, 5. So look at the 3 videos you see on the right. 2024 Chicago, she is already moving into late stance towards toe off. And the middle, London, she is just coming into mid stance. And then Chicago last year, she's somewhere in between. So one of the ways that she was faster in this race was with a higher cadence. And now we can go back. And although we do not have the same angle on all 3 videos, because in London she was going around a curve, we can still go back to when they were right in sync with that foot strike, and then go forward from there. That's closest to the same angle. And see the maximum distance between their thighs, so their peak of their flight phase. And you see again another way that Chepng'etich was faster in Chicago 2024, her stride length is longer. It's actually shortest in London, and she didn't have a great race in London. Then again, somewhere in between in Chicago last year. So we can run that forward again just to get another look, almost from exactly side on, all three videos. And now they're not quite at the same phase in the gait cycle, but still, it's very clear that her stride length was longer in 2024. So if you have a faster cadence and a longer stride length, that means much faster running. And really interesting to watch how that plays out at full speed. So let's just take a look at my slow motion footage one more time, but play it through at normal speed. All right, so here's that video again in normal speed. And look at the movement of her shoulders and upper body and the almost pumping of her head. And now if we go back to Chicago last year, 2023, she looks really different. And it's not just the different camera and different location. Take a look at her upper body and the amount of snap and the feeling in her stride. Compare again to what you just saw. So there's just a lot more spring and snap and pumping in her upper body. And so she's really working with every fiber of her body to create both this higher cadence and this longer stride. So that's the mechanics of how Chepng'etich set her new record. And it's the same strategy we all use. To run at a different speed is to run differently, at least slightly. When you think about it, it's really obvious. You've got to do something different to cover the ground faster. And it's usually a combination of a higher cadence and a longer stride length. And then that being able to connect your upper body to your lower body in a way that you can be effective with a more vigorous upper body movement. And so obviously, having the energy to drive that kind of movement is one factor. And that's what we do with training. But there's also having the movement capacity, being physically able to get the stride length, being able to shift your weight rapidly enough to have a higher cadence. And as I say, being able to having your upper body and your lower body connected enough that force runs through your whole body in a single piece. And so if you would like to experiment with some of that, I have a great lesson for you. It's a free mini course, and you find that in the description below as well. Or you can jump straight to the Balanced Runner System Online Camp, our flagship course, that will give you an in-depth training in all of these things so that for whatever your fitness, you can get more speed. And please, again, if you haven't, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends, and may all your running dreams come true.